Good evening, fans. Tim Kitzrow here, the voice of NBA Jam, and you're listening to the Game Dev Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by CodeWritePlay.com. Whoa, boom shakalaka!
My mom gave birth in 1985. I was bluer than a Pac-Man ghost, barely alive. In the Cold War, my only blanket was Tetris. I played Rampart with Reagan, rampaged the world for breakfast. The laundromat was my sanctuary, the arcade was my church.
Cool. Chris, thanks for joining me. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for jumping on a call this morning. I know you're a busy guy, so we were just talking about your move, and you just went to EGX, right?
Yeah, just for the one day. Yeah, but I had a little spot on one of the stages, met up with various people I've bumped into over the years. Yeah, it was a good time. Excellent.
It sounded like the place to be. I mean, it's a little bit off the beaten path for me. It's hard for me to get out there, but it sounded like everybody in the area really enjoyed it. Was there a lot of activity there? Was it kind of quiet?
There was quite a lot. I mean, I think in terms of like industry people, it was pretty busy. I'm sure for like the general public, they'd have been on the Saturday and the Sunday. But I think, things still aren't quite where they were before the pandemic and everything shut down. So, the amount of stuff there, perhaps isn't what it might have been, but things are getting better. Things are definitely moving in the right direction. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, we'll take what we can get, right? Cool. So we should have you go over a little bit of your background. You've done some pretty cool work, obviously. Give listeners an idea.
Yeah. So I joined the games industry in 2007. I started working at Jagex, who are mostly famous for making RuneScape. Although for the first about year and a half, I wasn't actually making games. I worked on such thrilling things as the billing system, player support, kind of back end kind of support systems and that kind of thing. But after about 18 months, they let me have a crack at making games. And I did that at Jagex right up until May last year. So I spent about 7 years working on RuneScape on the engine side of things. I worked on various other things that Jagex did that sadly weren't successful and don't exist anymore, including some that we didn't even announce because they were sort of prototypes, didn't work out. But there was a card game called Chronicle, which was kind of a RuneScape themed card game, which is less like Hearthstone than it sounds. But that was one of the most fun I had while there, because when you're working on RuneScape, you're working on something that's been going for years and years, and you're coming in and kind of working with lots of legacy stuff. But Chronicle was a ground up. We like one back end for a game, please. Could you design us one? And then kind of head up the team that built it. So that was pretty cool.
So, I mean, you're obviously a pretty technical person to handle what the RuneScape work required, right?
Yeah, I mean, not just me, obviously. Don't want to give the wrong impression that it's just me holding it together.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a lot of you've got a big weight of legacy stuff that needs to keep on working. So how quickly you can sort of change direction is limited. But then you are trying to do kind of new and exciting things, push the engine in different directions, and really kind of support what the content guys are doing so they can do cool stuff. Yeah, because people like to say, the engine is kind of the heart of everything, but fundamentally nobody's paying for what the engine team is doing. People are paying for the content team, and that's the stuff they want. So we want to make sure that they're able to do the best stuff they can.
It's interesting to hear from people who have worked on projects that have gone long enough to see this amount of like change in technology. You know what I mean? Like you've had to support quite a bit of technical evolution.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing for RuneScape was getting it out of the browser because it started out as a Java applet that ran in a browser, which was part of the reason that it was so successful early, is that you could, even if you were a little kid and your parents would let you install games on your PC, you could go and play RuneScape in your browser. You could play it in the school library and stuff. But then everybody realized that Java applets in browsers weren't the most secure things in the world. And we realized, we'd better stop doing this. So we had a crack at doing it in HTML5, which did work, but didn't have the performance we needed. So now RuneScape runs on a completely native C++ client. And for old school RuneScape, which we didn't want to do that for, we just thought, well, let's take the Java applet and we'll bundle it with OpenJDK and send you that, and you don't have to have Java installed on your desktop anymore. It went from a browser game to a native C++ client over 15 years.
you left more recently than I realized, so maybe you still have a sense of this. Like, there's still quite a bit of like, what's the player base like? It's still pretty big, right?
Oh yeah. So the big thing we did, I say we're not there anymore, but I was there at the time. I'm still slightly institutionalized, having worked there for 13 years. I'll still talk about Jagex as we. But the mobile ports, we did old school first because that was a little bit easier. Were absolutely phenomenal in terms of both membership and sort of CCU. We kind of thought, well, we've done this work now. People are playing on mobile. Will they play it for more than 5 minutes? And it turns out they will. So we thought it might just be a temporary spike and a drop, but it hasn't been. It's really sort of led to a resurgence of the game.
Very cool. It's nice to hear teams carrying it out this much, and that's quite a bit of fan service that you guys have worked very hard on. So that's cool. And more recently, you've started your indie work. I mean, what was the motivation? When did that start? Like, how has that gone?
Yeah, so I was actually doing both for a while. So Jagex let me go part-time. So from the very end of 2019, I was doing indie stuff as well. And really, I think it was just that after that many years in one place, I thought, it's time for a change. I did knock on a couple of doors in Cambridge in the UK, which is where Jagex is. Those didn't work out. So I thought, right, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to have a stab at the indie dream. So about 2.5 years ago, I actually started, having done some prototyping, I started on a game, Hexahedra, a puzzle game, which now has a demo on Steam. Yeah, which was obviously quite a transition. And trying to do two things at once was a little odd, because also at the same time, we were all working from home because of COVID. So yeah, I was sort of rocking up for 5 days a month. Here, sort of a couple of days here, a couple of days there at Jagex, sort of via Zoom. And, I basically took my dev PC home. Yeah, I was doing that and then doing indie stuff all the other weekdays.
And this seems like an ambitious first indie project for not getting as much time as I'm sure you would like, because it goes deep. Like I watched the trailer and just I watched it several times. I'm like, wow, this really is a fairly deep, fairly ambitious puzzle game, which has a lot to do with like factories and automation and things. Like, you'll describe it better than I will, but like there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Although I think, you're right, there is, but it's one of those games where you get a lot of interesting stuff out of quite simple elements. So it's an open-ended puzzle game. So rather than there being a puzzle where there's one right answer, it's here's a factory, here are the tools you need to make your factory make the right stuff. Off you go, and then it kind of rates you on how efficiently you can do things and that sort of thing. But you've got a bunch of different devices that do things to cubes in a factory, that paint them, clean them, fire lasers at them and stuff. There's enough sort of variety in those things that you can then make sort of complex factories with lots of branching logic and loops and sort of some fairly complex behavior. So it all and it was quite pleasing to see it come together from a sort of a very early stage where I sort of only had a few things. And watching that now I've got sort of more devices, more commands, you actually get a lot of complexity, even though each individual piece is quite simple. So it's quite pleasing in that sense. And it is, I guess, in one sense, it is ambitious. But having worked at Jagex, I decided going indie. Well, I'm not going to touch anything to do with multiplayer. That's a stupid idea. I'm a one-man team. I know just how hard that is.
Smart,
even if it's not an MMO. And if I try and do anything like that, I will kind of drown in my own ambition. Because I'm primarily a kind of a programmer. It's my sort of back end history. Making a puzzle game, as well as it being the kind of game I like to play, I love playing like Zachtronic stuff, Opus Magnum, Space Cave, that kind of thing. It also maximizes how much of the game I can make. So I'm paying freelancers to make all the graphics and the music and so on. But the more I can do myself, the cheaper it is to make. And also it's the kind of game where once you've got some assets, those are very reusable. A bunch of puzzles use the same stuff. I don't need huge set pieces of 3D artwork and stuff. So yeah, I was, although the game has a lot of depth, which is great, but I deliberately set out to make something that was relatively small in scope, and that meant I could do as much of it as possible.
Now, tell me if I'm right. The impression I had was that you had the playable demo on Steam. You're just entering crowdfunding to sort of build it out into the fully releasable game. Is that right?
Yeah. So yesterday, as we're recording this, the 27th, So it went live on Kickstarter, which is exciting and a bit terrifying. But here we go. So I've sort of taken it as in the game. The game works. There's a demo on Steam if people want to give it a go. But what it needs is more environments. Having said I don't need that many assets, I do want there to be some variation as you go through the game. There's going to be a bit of narrative, and I need some sort of 2D art to kind of sell that. So I just need money to go and pay freelancers to make me more stuff.
I took a look at the crowdfunding page, and you have pictures of like the assets that do certain sets of the different parts, and that's when it hit me like, this is a deep game, but it's also very clever in its design. Like you said, you didn't need that many assets to do a lot of work, like a lot of variation in the game, which is smart for a primarily a programmer like myself who would also be looking for either prepackaged assets or to get some help with that. So that seems like smart design. So I'm guessing that brings down the potential cost of, how much you actually need to fund it. But it looks like you've had a decent turnout already, right?
Yeah, the first day went pretty well. I've got various things lined up. I've got a bunch of streamers lined up. So it's kind of, you want something pushing your Kickstarter every day, otherwise it kind of dies. But yeah, solid first day, and obviously you then get there's always a sort of a bucket shape to these things where you get a big pickup at the end.
Something I like that you said was, even as a former RuneScape developer, you went and looked at indie projects and went, multiplayer, no. Like, want to avoid that. And I think that's very telling, because a lot of people come in who don't know as much about it as you do and go, shouldn't be a huge deal, right? Like, the answer is yes. It's a very, very big deal, especially to do it right.
Yeah. And you can do quick and dirty client authoritative stuff where every player is in charge of their own game state, which is fine. As a co-op experience in particular is probably fine, but for anything competitive, suddenly you've made the game vastly exploitable, and so to get that right. And to do it in a robust way is way more work than it first seems.
Mm-hmm. So you've got a little bit of a community started on Steam, I'm guessing. Like, I'm guessing you're hearing from players already. How's that going?
Yeah, I mean, it's all feedback has been very positive. More on Discord than on Steam. And I've been streaming all the dev on Twitch as well. So there's a bunch of people who kind of come out and hang out with me as I sort of program the thing, which has been, I think, as a solo dev, has been a great encouragement. So I'm not just sort of literally by myself all day. Also useful just for keeping me engaged. Like, I can't go and waste 20 minutes reading Reddit if people are watching me on stream. So, and people have commented that it's very well polished as a demo. They're surprised at the level of polish for an indie thing. But I mean, the game has been in its sort of functional state for quite a long time now. And I spent the last few months just tweaking the UI, changing the tutorial around, that kind of thing. So people are broadly very positive about it. It is quite a niche game. I'm not expecting to be the next Fortnite or anything. But for people who are into that particular vibe, feedback has been really good.
I love this kind of thing. It reminds me of like the old Incredible Machine games, your Rube Goldberg type puzzles, which is cool. It's like, I think anybody who takes time to look at that, like, it might not be the most natural thing for some players to pick, but if they sit down and look at it, they go, oh yeah, this is great. I love this kind of thing. And they fiddle with it. So I'm hoping you get that same effect too. It looks like it's had a little bit of like some small press attention too, right?
Yeah, that came from taking the game to Insomnia, which is a big LAN event in the UK. So it's actually, as a LAN party, it's the biggest thing the UK has, but it also has an expo attached to it. And they are another group who sort of give out kind of indie expo space for free. So I grabbed one of those, which was great. And some journalists came around, and I got a couple of articles out of that. So at that point, it was in closed beta, so I got an Alpha Beta Gamer article about it, for example. Yeah, so it has picked up a little bit of interest.
It seems like the footwork, actually showing up to events, like as soon as you have something you can show, that I'm sure you've seen. There's a lot of talk about indie marketing right now, particularly on Twitter, if you're active there, and people saying, like, not just that it's difficult, it's definitely difficult. No question about it. It's hard to do what I do. It's hard to do what you do because of the amount of it that is out there. So it's hard to stand out, even if it's great. But I hear people say that, like, it can't be done. And I don't believe that. And I think that you found a way to do it, which is show up, show people. You're not going to get everybody. This may not hit IGN during demo phase or anything like that, but like it seems like you're taking the right steps and you are getting some attention. I mean, that's got to be encouraging, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I have, sent a lot of emails out and got, to journalists and not got much response. I think partly because I'm at the demo stage rather than the release stage, which is understandable. If there's way too many indies to cover all of them, by all means, give the coverage to the people who are actually about to release a game. That makes perfect sense. I don't begrudge anybody doing that. Some games just naturally lend themselves to grabbing people's attention. Like Trombone Champ has just gone huge because it's hilarious watching people fail to play a tune well. And that is just very memeable. When you're making a puzzle game, it doesn't really work that way. It doesn't have fun action sequences. It doesn't have anything that's sort of eye-catching in that sort of sense. But yeah, once I get it in front of the people who are interested in it, they all go, "Oh yes, this is a game that's got legs. It's got the depth. It's got the mechanics. It's got quality." It is just perhaps a little harder to break out in a big way.
Okay, this episode is brought to you in part by Pact Publishing, who I love. If you are a Unity game developer working on 3D games, or if you would like to be, check out Unity 3D game development from Pact, which is available right now. Unity 3D game development was written by not one, but 4 authors, including Anthony Davis, an experienced senior technical artist, Travis Baptiste, who is an expert artist and 3D modeler, Russell Craig, who is a senior software engineer at Unity Technologies, and Ryan Stunkel, who is a professional sound designer. So you should pay attention to who you learn from, and it's difficult to get more authoritative than this. So the book walks you through designing characters, building environments, thinking your way through user interactions, getting technical with things like building, lighting, testing, you name it. And you can join a book community on Discord where you can interact with the authors, meet other devs, participate in events, all kinds of stuff. So check out Unity 3D game development, available right now if that sounds good to you. Big thanks to Pact for supporting the show. I felt like you have just about a perfect demo for it. Did you do that yourself? I'm sorry. I mean, the trailer. That's what I meant.
The trailer.
Like,
oh, yeah.
The trailer shows like everything like just right. It really caught my attention. Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of all the graphical assets, I've reused a lot of stuff from the game, even like the overlays and stuff. I mean, I'll be honest, mostly I looked at the Opus Magnum trailer and thought, that's quite good. I'll try and do something a little bit like that. Not like, frame for frame, but the idea of here's how you start a factory, here's how you make it bigger, here's a much more exciting one, and kind of building up and then kind of showing all the little extra mechanics you can do, like, the branching logic and the loops and that kind of thing, and kind of building up. I've also got the benefit of the music track in the game has lots of layers. So the bigger your factory is, the more layers of music. And when you run it, you get an extra layer on top of it. And I was able to use that in the trailer. So the trailer starts off just with the first layer. And as you go through and what you're seeing gets more and more impressive, the music kind of ramps up with it as well. So I had the advantage of having that already in place. Yeah. And it was then me plugging away. I mean, that is version, 5 of the trailer. The first ones were much less good, but I sort of got the swing of it. And the first one didn't even have like the final UI artwork at it, so it was rough. The UI when it was still black rectangles with white borders, because that was my level of artwork. It didn't look anywhere near as catchy, but yes, it's taken a long time and a lot of effort for me to get it to that point. And the first ones are pretty poor, but I've got the advantage of having lots of assets that kind of dovetail well into it.
That stood out to me when the discussion started about, good indie marketing, what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't work, was, everybody I've talked to, it sounds like the people it's working out for, they're doing the marketing part for themselves as best they can, but they're doing what you're doing. They're iterating on it. They're going back, seeing what works, what doesn't. The same stuff you do in development, coding, design, whatever it is. Like, you just go back to the drawing board sometimes, say like, okay, I did it. That one didn't work. Let's try it again with something else. I feel like that effort is what adds up over time,
Yeah, I think they have improved. The thing I can't do, which I'd love to do because I need budget for it, is to sort of properly A/B test different things and kind of pay to put this in front of this many people and this one. But I don't have the budget for that, so I've got to put out a new thing, see what the impact is, which makes it harder. But yeah, you've just got to keep plugging away, and if it doesn't work, accept it, tweak it, do it again.
Speaking of budgeting and such, being an indie solo developer, how do you decide on, like, what was your process for deciding who to work with for assets, music, anything like that?
Yeah, and for some of the things, like the concept artist is someone I worked with at Jagex previously, who has since gone freelance. So, looking her up and saying, hey, you're free for some work was pretty straightforward. Other than that, I have just been sort of pitching for stuff. So there's a big UK-based games industry Slack channel run by the Splash Damage guys, which has huge numbers of people on it. And it's very easy there to, put an ad out there and get some sort of high quality responses. If you sort of advertise more widely, if you put a thing out on like a game dev Discord, you get huge numbers of people who are offering work, but the quality perhaps isn't there. Whereas in that space, it's sort of people already in the industry working as professionals. So it was a bit easier to far fewer people interested, but of a higher standard. So so most of the people I've actually worked with are people I hadn't met before, and possibly even hadn't met before I commissioned them, which are always a bit nerve-wracking. I just sort of had chatted to them online, had seen their portfolios. I'm grateful that they all seem to have worked out. I haven't regretted any of the contracts I've signed, which has been a real blessing. But yes, it has been a case of putting the word out there in the right places and taking a look at a lot of portfolios.
That is good, because you're right. It's a risk, and it's business, and business as an indie is scary. No matter what. Because if I certainly hear from people pretty regularly who go, I brought somebody in for this, and they totally dumped it, they punted, it was no good, whatever the case is, and that can kill a project, really.
Yeah. Because I've had the reason I'm on Kickstarter now is that the initial sort of funding I had to get the demo made has run dry, and if I had picked a Duff freelancer, that would have been a real blow. Although partly having been in the industry a while, I kind of knew kind of where to spend the money, I think, and sort of who to focus on, and I sort of realized, well, because the demo currently doesn't have any sound effects, but it does have music, and I thought, well, that gives it an audio feel. But actually, that's probably the better way. If I can only afford to do one right now, do that, give it an atmosphere. The fact that the voices over there aren't making any noise, well, they're at a distance. It's not so bad. But there is you've kind of sold the atmosphere of the game, being a kind of sci-fi with lots of synths and that kind of thing. That was helpful. But it could easily have been a disaster. It hasn't been, and that's good.
It is always good to hear when it goes well. Speaking of puzzle games, like, what are some puzzle games you think are crushing it right now? Like, what's the kind of thing that inspires you that you play now, or are you more inspired by like older stuff?
I mean, a big influence on Hexahedra has been all the Zachtronic stuff, because they kind of dominate that space. They're sort of the big player. Although they have said that their next game is going to be their last one, which is going to be sad. Last Call BBS it's in early access, but once it comes out, they've decided, not because I think just because they want to do different things. There's nothing sort of they've fallen out or anything. It's just that they've kind of come to an end. That kind of thing, a really big influence. I mean, my favorite puzzle game of all time is the Talos Principle, but that's a very different kind of game. It's that kind of getting depth out of a small number of mechanics. And things like you said, the Incredible Machine is a slightly different kind of game, but it's got that same idea of a bunch of simple tools making cool stuff. Is just it pleases my programmer brain, I think, is part of the part of the reason for it.
That was kind of a topic I was thinking about writing recently, because I have a lot of traditional gamer friends who are not developers, not creative folks in this way, at least. And when a lot of my friends talk about, like, how much they liked Red Dead Redemption 2 and, when's the next Call of Duty coming out? Like, we do play Call of Duty together. We have fun with that kind of thing. But what I appreciate out of games is so different from the traditional, like, big AAA experience. Like, I really like creating something. I like organizing something. I even started playing Shipbreaker recently, where you're dismantling ships, but you're doing it in such a neat and clean, tidy way. Even stuff like House Flipper or something, like, I could sit in front of that forever. And so that's something that interests me about this, because I've really been thinking about the different things we all like to get out of games. And for me, it's more order than chaos. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to watch, like, the rise of, something simulator, whether it be, Power Wash or whatever. And people just kind of, in some ways they are more toys than games. There's nothing wrong with toys, but they are, they're an activity rather than a game with lots of sort of interesting choices about them. But they're clearly scratching an itch of people who just want something to relax to. And I think they're the kind of games that I would enjoy, but probably wouldn't stick with for that long. Because I think eventually it would feel a bit more like work. Like I can visualize what this very clean thing looks like, but the going through the work of, spraying everything perhaps wouldn't hold me for that long. But clearly that's I think it's more of a sort of relaxation and chill thing for people rather than gaming as such. So it's great. It's good that there's a new niche and there's a whole new bunch of people probably coming to these things who, aren't into modern warfare or whatever, but can want to relax in that way, and it's cool.
I think I've heard Will Wright talk about this topic also, of course, in the development of like SimCity and, Spore and whatever else, but like talk about, he said exactly that. He said, like, I look at it like I'm creating basically a plaything. You could think of it as a toy or just a little thing with buttons that does neat stuff. And he said, like, he got into that going, okay, I'll create this and see how far it goes. And the answer was, there's almost unlimited space to push that, and people will follow. People will enjoy it and play it. And so I think it's cool. I think it's cool to sort of push our boundaries of what we think of as a game, or, where a game goes, how it's supposed to be packaged, and what the end is supposed to look like. Should there be an end? Who knows? But I love projects like that. I'm curious to know, it seems like people are behind this project and supporting it. I'm curious what feedback looks like for a game like this. What's it been like so far?
I've had some people give some like really specific, you need to change this very small thing kind of feedback, which like I will sort of consider, but then, if you're the only person asking for it, maybe it's not the most important thing. But people are, the really interesting thing is I've done a lot of playtests where people are streaming to me just over Discord or something what they're doing, and it's amazing to see what people do and don't pick up on. And so a lot of the tutorial work has been kind of making sure that people don't, if there's a snag, everyone gets over that particular hump. But even stuff like UI things where like all the time controls are in a line apart from the stop button that's down here, and people just don't see it because they're looking in this long line for where's the stop, and looking somewhere else just doesn't, their brain is kind of blanked that out. Their brain has said, this is the bit I need. It's somewhere here, only it isn't. And then people will spend quite a lot of time before they sort of break out of that and go do something else. So yeah, I've had really useful sort of feedback on how the game experience works. Got all that, from that, getting it that way, which has been really valuable. But yes, I mean, in terms of people, broadly have said, it's a lot of fun, I really enjoyed it, or say, it was a bit hard, maybe towards the end. But it's interesting because players never give feedback the way game developers do, which is fine. But you get a very kind of different vibe out of people, particularly when people think they need to be nice to you. So you get very different feedback from sort of friends as well. So it's useful to have the kind of harsher stuff sometimes. So when I've put the game up on, sort of Discord for puzzle gamers, I get a very different kind of feedback from people who kind of found me on Twitch and kind of got to know me a bit. So I feel like I've rambled a lot there. I'm not sure I really answered your question.
No, that's about right. And that's pretty open-ended, obviously. But it's something we don't think about. Like we try to design experiences for players that a big thing in games is like having the player like think differently, think outside the box, especially in puzzle games, like taking their expectations, sort of like twisting a little bit and going, can you think on your feet? Can you be ready for this? But like from the design perspective, that's difficult because maybe we don't always go like, okay, we trained you to think differently. Are we ready for that? Have we guided this experience the right way? Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
There's something that Zach Barth, who the guy who set up Zachtronics, said is that no matter what your tutorial is, people are basically trial and erroring their way to the solution. They're just going to try things in your game. And so what the job of the tutorial really is to funnel them so that their trial and error ends up in the right place. And they've spotted all the relevant things on the way and they've learned the necessary things. So you're just trying to kind of bound them as they go rather than just hold their hand, in which case they don't learn as much. And seeing where people, you think you've got a nice funnel, but some people jump out of your box and kind of end up somewhere over here and get stuck, and then working out how to sort of, make the whole structure kind of keep them heading in the right direction is kind of the challenge, I think.
Yeah, and that's part of why I think a puzzle game is super ambitious, just because of all the things you don't necessarily see going in. Even I had this experience trying to make a card game that I wanted to build out after a game jam, and went like, I came up with a basic thing and I thought it worked. I got some nice feedback, and I thought, like, let's really push this a little further. And by the end of it, like, for one thing, it never became a fully fleshed out product. It would have taken probably years. It expands very quickly. And by the end of it, you're going like, I should have just tried like a Mario clone or something. Like, that would have been infinitely simpler than what this turned into. You think like just little squares moving around a screen and everything's going to be fine. It gets weird. It gets scary.
Yeah. Feature creep is real. I mean, that was one project I worked on way back when, where there's this sort of saying that, feature creep is like trying to make an octopus by nailing extra legs onto a dog. And I think by the end of the project, we'd got a centipede, having started with the dog. It had gone, and our sort of, our iteration time was horrendous. And so I think, that's kind of one of the reasons that making this puzzle game kind of works, because I can add, adding an extra device to the kind of things you can do in your factory that's all very self-contained. It's one of the most sort of well-designed for OO programming projects I think I've ever worked on, because there are a bunch of things in your factory and they're all in charge of their own little thing. If you tell the factory that says this device, do your thing, and it's then in charge of doing its own little thing, and they're all very self-contained. So building out extra functionality worked well, because it was never going to require enormous rewrites of existing stuff, because they're all sort of very well siloed from each other. That was why I think one of the appeals the project had, was it was just very neatly divided up logically and was very easy to reason about as a solo dev.
Let's say this exceeded all expectations, went extremely well for you, and you had just a ton of flexibility on like where you went from here. Like, do you think you would grow the studio, start a team? Like, would you focus on just a bigger project next time? Like, where would you go from here?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of tried not to daydream too much and keep my focus. But I think I do very much enjoy being a solo indie. I think I think ending up as being a studio owner or a manager, I don't think I'd enjoy it, and I don't think it would play to my strengths. So I don't think I'd want to go in that direction. But I would like to be able to make games where I'm able to take freelancers and sort of pay them to do even more things and make cooler stuff. I would probably end up still making games where, the code and the game design is me, and if they're able to have, much more exciting art and sound budgets, would be my guess, I think, where I'd go.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, because I'm always trying to look for little things like, what can we appreciate about the way things have changed in recent years? And of course, remote work has become more not just possible, but more like expected. Like, we expect to see people available to do certain things. And I think that kind of freelancer model makes more sense than even it used to. And it used to be fine. But it seems like that's maybe the future of a lot of indie development, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Because it used to be really niche. There was it never got released. A friend of mine worked on a PlayStation port of the original Unreal, which basically worked but never got out. And this is while he was still at school. He was an absolute legend. This was like 1996 or something. But that was an entirely remote studio. Like, some of them were in America. He was in the UK. So it has been going on for a while. But yeah, it is going to become much, much more normal. But I think, so my wife has a perfectly sort of normal, regular job. She's not an indie. She's been working at home 4 days a week for a while. She goes in once a week, just because it's actually nice to see your colleagues. It is helpful to have meetings. So there is, I think there's always going to be some place for in-person stuff. But I guess actually also when you're doing game development, it is, there's no manufacturing facility people have got to go to. It is much easier to do it. And I think, it's here to stay. It's not going to disappear, I don't think.
Yeah. And in browsing your Twitter feed, I couldn't help but notice her crocheted animals that she was hiding around.
Oh, yeah.
And that was delightful. Like, if anybody goes to follow you after the show, I would strongly suggest they check out the tiny crocheted animals. She's clearly a very talented craft person.
He might be here. Yes, he is. Hang on. One moment. There we go. Here is Octavius. He hangs out with me. And
fantastic.
And Zoom is slightly green screen again, but never mind. But yeah, and he has a variety of hats that come off. So she does this all the time, and she hides them around the house and stuff. And it's a lot of fun. But crochet and game dev is kind of my Twitter feed, more or less.
That's a nice wholesome subset of things to talk about. You're also kind of so clearly you worked in like fantasy game development, but you're a little bit of a sci-fi guy too, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, if I could show you my shelf over there, you'd see a whole worth of games and books and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think it's weird. So my dad was my parents were into sci-fi as a kid, and so I kind of always almost looked on that as the default literary genre because that wasn't what was in the house. I love the idea of being an engineer because in all these old sci-fi books from like the 60s, engineers, the people who can just fix any problem. And I think that was really a big part of, why I grew up the way I am.
It's true. Like my mom and I, when I was young, I don't think my dad was into anything like that, but my mom was a Star Trek fan from just like way back. And that was one of like really pretty few things that, I mean, it wasn't like we couldn't just sit in a room together and enjoy anything, but like that was one thing that was like, oh, like the next generation's on? Okay. I'll sit down and watch that. And I really did develop quite an appreciation for that. And it doesn't hurt if you have a parent who's into it, because obviously I have friends who are like, my parents didn't like that stuff, so they didn't really want me to just take up the TV in the evening with Star Trek or whatever. But it is kind of cool to have a little family, somebody interested in that kind of thing. So I did come up with a healthy appreciation for that stuff, and what a great time it is for sci-fi fans. We've got just fantastic stuff to watch now,
Yeah. In fact, it's possibly my earliest memory. It gets a bit hazy that far back, but I think one of the earliest things I can remember is of helping, in inverted commas, my dad to play the original Elite. It would have been like, I don't know, 1985 or something. Well, I sat on his lap and I got to press M when he wanted to fire a missile, and that was me helping. I've been, and apparently when I first went to school, I could recognize my own name or I could type my own name, I think, on a keyboard. I couldn't write anything, but I could type it out on a keyboard as long as it was in capitals. And I got confused if it wasn't in capitals. But yeah, I've always been extremely computery just because, that's what we had in the house.
Similar to the earlier question, like what kind of game would you tackle after this if things went really well and you just could do anything you wanted?
I mean, if I could do anything I wanted, I have got an 80-hour RPG stuck in here somewhere, which I'd love to get out into the world. But
nice.
No matter how well Hexahedra went, I suspect that might be too ambitious, particularly if I wanted to stay solo. I think it wouldn't be Hexahedra 2 straight out of the gate. I'd want to go and do something else. I'd probably take some time to kind of, obviously there'd be a load of prototyping and who knows where that would go. But I think I probably want to branch out a little bit and not just stick in sort of one particular direction too much. I do kind of enjoy kind of abstract stuff, so it might be something relatively conceptual. I'm not going to go make an FPS. I don't think that's just kind of. I played FPS. There's nothing wrong with them, but I just don't think that's kind of where I'm going to go. But something that's probably a bit more slow paced and sort of more in the kind of puzzly space, I would guess.
Mm-hmm. What's the technology for this game? I mean, are you using an engine of any kind, coding from scratch? Like, what's that? How's that work?
So, the game's in Unity. Although I've taken a very specific approach where all of the core logic of you set up a factory, does it solve the level? That exists as a pure C# DLL. So that's not actually in Unity because it means I can then use that on a back end for verifying stats. So I don't have this written yet, but there will be a stat server that will kind of track, who's got there'll be lots of leaderboards and graphs and stuff in the game of your performance against other people's in the world. And also I want to make sure that people can't cheat with that. So I set out from the beginning to make the core logic standalone. And so really Unity is basically there to gather the player's input and to show them the results of what's going on. That's really all it does. And provide the tutorial and stuff, but all the core logic is squirreled away in a little DLL.
I love that. I love that answer for a programmer because that means you don't have to spend your time learning every time somebody moves something in a menu in Unity the way that so many programmers who go, look, I need the platform support, like especially people who want to do an Xbox release later, or how it is. But they give up the ability to do the like actual coding, and they have to learn to do it the Unity way. That's what I kind of don't like about it. So that seems fantastic if you can easily figure out how to do it. So that's perfect. Good answer.
I particularly covered what I was saying before, that the game really lends itself to OO programming. It just that made it just very neat. And also the other advantage of it is that it is unit tested up, down, and sideways. It's really easy to unit test the DLL much more. I mean, Unity actually has pretty good unit test support, and you can even get the game loop wired in, so you can, if you need to wait for, the end of a frame to run to check a state for something, you can do that. But it is just much easier to do it that way. So I can have real confidence that the actual logic of does this puzzle work is absolutely rock solid, because it's so easy to test it when it's done that way.
Mm-hmm. How is the turnout for your dev streams? Because I love talking to people who do dev streams, because, as you said, it's a great way to stay on topic, on focus. You're not going to take a break on Reddit, like you said. But it seems like Twitch itself is like, some days it's great for that. Some days it's still pretty lonely. It's almost worse. It's like, well, I'm also on stream and there's no one there either.
Yeah. I mean, it's never been huge. Which I think is, partly because these game dev streams aren't going to be as big as gameplay streams, but also because it is itself a niche game that I'm making. It doesn't have, when I go and test something, you don't get a couple minutes of fun action to watch. It is just, cubes moving around a factory. So I think it as entertainment, it's not the best kind of game dev in that sense. But some of the really core members of the community I've got are people who arrived via Twitch and have been, watching me dev the game for the last, 18 months or something. So in terms of community building and getting a really keen core who are very supportive, it has been very useful.
Is it a sort of very technical audience? Are they primarily fans of games, or are they knowledgeable on coding and want to see other people do it? Like, how's that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are coders, either professional or hobbyist. And I'm always I'm happy to answer questions about how game dev works on stream. So I get I get some students kind of asking how things work, that kind of thing. I think also, if you're interested in the game, there's a high chance you're probably quite into programming anyway, just because of that nature of the game. So there's the thing people always say, that like marketing on Twitter doesn't really work for game dev, because the people who follow you are other game devs, which I think is true. Like, I've got a slight advantage that there's quite high odds that game devs would like my game, but nonetheless, it is yes. You got to beware of having huge followings on Twitter that don't actually go anywhere because it's not really your target audience. But there's a certain amount of crossover, I think.
Yeah, I saw that come up also, and there's a comic strip about it going around right now, which everybody's seeing, and I saw it, and I guess for one thing, I'm probably bringing a little personal emotion into that, because it's like, okay, well, I'm making something primarily for that same audience, and so it feels like, are you questioning my judgment? Which is perfectly fair to talk about. Like, maybe it's not the best way to spend time, but I do think it's a valid way to spend time, because that audience, to me, they're people who are so passionate about games, for one thing, that they tried to learn how to make them and do creative work. So I still think they're gamers at heart, and they're connected to other gamers. But I do also agree that, like, too many people are too into it. So, there's a balance to strike. For one thing, I think it's good for you. I think it's good for you to meet and connect with people who are doing it. When you say that you're frustrated with, Unity 2020 dot whatever, like, somebody's going to know, and somebody's going to, yeah, I know, it's totally like, they got to fix that. But it can't be all you do, like, through release, and then go like, none of these developers bought my game. Like, well, they're pretty busy, you know what I mean?
They want people to buy their games. If we all bought each other's games, all that happened, Steam would take a big cut and we'd all have no money left. So
right. Everyone's passing the same $15 around every time a game comes out, and Steam's just gradually soaking it up.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself doing release beyond Steam? Like, are you on itch? Like, do you have any other platforms you like? Or
yes, I mean, I'm sort of focusing on Steam now, because obviously that's where the volume is. I would like to do the other things. There's a certain amount of overhead of, it does slow you down a bit, whether it's better to get the game out on Steam and then go to the things later. Like, there is a niche page, but there's nothing, it's not sort of really what I'm pushing. So I think it will probably end up being Steam only on release, but then I will stick it on the other storefronts. I was then talking to other indies who sort of, got their game on GOG, but they were saying, well, you don't really get a lot of uplift from that. And, they're kind of insisting on feature parity in terms of, achievements and all the other stuff. So, yeah, I was sort of cautioned against it by at least one person who hadn't had a lot of success with it. So, yeah. And also there's EGS as well, where, it may end up. But, yes, I'm not sort of really focusing on that right now.
And I guess I probably know the answer to this, but this may not be the one to try to port to consoles, right? I mean, like, that seems like a tall order.
Yes, I mean, I'm just trying to think how on earth what on earth I would do to the control scheme to make it work on the pad. Amongst other things, because it's a, it's if you've looked at it, you'll notice that every letter on the keyboard is a shortcut to a different command, for example. I mean, also you don't have to play it with the keyboard shortcuts, but it's that kind of relatively, there's a lot of different things in that UI that you could do. But people have got it running on a Steam Deck, which was fun, and it's not optimized for that. The controls aren't great, the UI is very small, it's not certainly in its current state, it's not a game that really lends itself to that, I don't think.
I think the ambition for that kind of depends on where you started playing. Like you talked about very early memories typing on the keyboard and stuff. Like you seem like a PC person. Whereas like I think about that all the time. Like it'd be so fun to get my first game on the Switch, because I'm a big Nintendo kid growing up. But like the path there is a lot further, It's like you're starting on PC anyway. And if things go well, you can get Nintendo's attention and do a Switch release. It's a tough road, especially for like indies just getting established who haven't done a big release yet, don't have any contacts there. You know what I mean?
Switch has been this sort of, at least to me, I was surprised at first, this sort of, big success point for indies, which I hadn't expected. I don't own one. But a lot of people are sort of having a lot of success with it, bringing games to Switch. But it's a cool platform, but I just think it's unlikely Hexahedra is going to end up on there.
How long from now, at the time of recording, how much longer is the crowdfunding campaign going to be?
Oh, it's just over a month. So it's the 3rd of November is when it ends. So I kind of timed it now because the game's also going to be on Steam Next Fest next week. So the 3rd of October is when it starts, isn't it?
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of, I've sort of dovetailed all of that to drive as much traffic as I can. But there's 36 days to go, I think.
Got it. So plenty of time for people to hear this and hopefully go check it out. Of course, now again, we're guilty of doing the thing where we're going to talk to game developers about game development and go, hey, catch the game. But to my argument's credit, we do see that. We see that, that audience tends to support game stuff. And I think some of it's just selfish. We all like games. We all want to play good games, and we hear about them and we go play them. But let people know where to follow you online, where to see the project, anything.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're into game dev, it's a programming game, so you'll probably like it. But
it's true, yeah.
So there's, if you search for Hexahedra on Steam, it'll come up. So there's a demo on there, so you can. One of the reasons the Kickstarter's happening now is that I've got a demo. I can say, hey, the first thing on the Kickstarter page is go and play the demo, see if you like it, come back it. Yes, and it's on Kickstarter. The other place. There's various other places you can find, which are probably hard to read out, but I don't know if you can add links to stuff.
Oh, later, yeah, we'll have links for,
Cool. That's fine. So, there's a Discord server for the game. There's Twitter. You can go and watch me on Twitch and kind of ask me game dev questions if you like. Those would be the obvious places, I think.
Cool. Yeah, Discord needs easier links or something. I don't know what to do, but it's difficult to get people onto servers, Yeah.
If your server is boosted enough, they give you a nice link, I think, but rather than the kind of random string of text. But it is. They're never easy to remember.
Yeah, I'm not far enough to even know that feature exists. So, like, we've got one. It's nothing like that. But this is all very cool. I wish you the best of luck. I hope the game does well. I'm looking forward to seeing the full thing in action, and I'd encourage people to check it out. So, good luck with it, and come back. Let us know how it went.
Thank you very much.
Okay, as always, if you enjoy Game Dev Breakdown, please consider subscribing wherever you're listening right now. We have articles, show notes, and more available at CodeWritePlay.com. You can reach out on Twitter at CodeWritePlay, at GameDevPod, and me at Mechatodzilla with 1D and 2 L's. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to our sponsors. Show them some love, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.